Hello everyone, come back with me Mr. Modemang. In this video, I will translate a video on YouTube, and the title of the video is A Simple Way to Break a Bad Habit. So enjoy watching.
When I was first learning to meditate, the instruction was to simply pay attention to my breath, and when my mind wandered, to bring it back. Sounded simple enough, yet I'd sit on these silent retreats, sweating through t-shirts in the middle of winter. I'd take naps every chance I got because it was really hard work. Actually, it was exhausting. The instruction was simple enough, but I was missing something really important. So why is it so hard to pay attention? Well, studies show that even when we're really trying to pay attention to something, like maybe this talk, at some point about half of us will drift off into a daydream or have this urge to check our Twitter feed. So what's going on here? It turns out that we're fighting one of the most evolutionarily conserved learning processes currently known in science, one that's conserved back to the most basic nervous systems known to man. This reward-based learning process is called positive and negative reinforcement, and basically goes like this. We see some food that looks good. Our brain says, calories, survival. We eat the food, we taste it tastes good. And especially with sugar, our bodies send a signal to our brain that says, remember what you're eating and where you found it. We lay down this context-dependent memory and learn to repeat the process next time. See food, eat food, feel good, repeat. Trigger, behavior, reward. Simple, right? Well, after a while, our creative brains say, you know what? You can use this for more than just remembering where food is. Next time you feel bad, why don't you try eating something good so you'll feel better? We thank our brains for the great idea. Try this and quickly learn that if we eat chocolate or ice cream when we're mad or sad, we feel better. Same process, just a different trigger. Instead of this hunger signal coming from our stomach, this emotional signal, feeling sad, triggers that urge to eat. Maybe in our teenage years, we were a nerd at school, and we see those rebel kids outside smoking, we think, hey, I want to be cool, so we start smoking. The Marlboro Man wasn't a dork, and that was no accident. See cool, smoke to be cool, feel good. Repeat. Trigger, behavior, reward. And each time we do this, we learn to repeat the process, and it becomes a habit. So later, feeling stressed out triggers that urge to smoke a cigarette or to eat something sweet. Now with these same brain processes, we've gone from learning to survive to literally killing ourselves with these habits. Obesity and smoking are among the leading preventable causes of morbidity and mortality in the world. So back to my breath. What if instead of fighting our brains or trying to force ourselves to pay attention, we instead tapped into this natural reward-based learning process, but added a twist? What if instead we just got really curious about what was happening in our momentary experience? I'll give you an example. In my lab, we studied whether mindfulness training could help people quit smoking. Now, just like trying to force myself to pay attention to my breath, they could try to force themselves to quit smoking. And the majority of them had tried this before and failed, on average 6 times. Now, with mindfulness training, we dropped the bit about forcing and instead focused on being curious. In fact, we even told them to smoke. What? Yeah, we said, go ahead and smoke. Just be really curious about what it's like when you do. And what did they notice? Well, here's an example from one of our smokers. She said, mindful smoking smells like stinky cheese and tastes like chemicals. Yuck. Now, she knew cognitively that smoking was bad for her. That's why she joined our program. What she discovered just by being curiously aware when she smoked was that smoking tastes like shit. Now, she moved from knowledge to wisdom. She moved from knowing in her head that smoking was bad for her to knowing it in her bones. And the spell of smoking was broken. She started to become disenchanted with her behavior. Now, the prefrontal cortex, that youngest part of our brain from an evolutionary perspective, It understands on an intellectual level that we shouldn't smoke. And it tries its hardest to help us change our behavior, to help us stop smoking, to help us stop eating that second, that third, that fourth cookie. We call this cognitive control. We're using cognition to control our behavior. Unfortunately, this is also the first part of our brain that goes offline when we get stressed out, which isn't that helpful. Now, we can all relate to this in our own experience. We're much more likely to do things like yell at our spouse or kids when we're stressed out or tired, even though we know it's not going to be helpful. We just can't help ourselves. Now, when the prefrontal cortex goes offline, we fall back into our old habits, which is why this disenchantment is so important. Seeing what we get from our habits helps us understand them in a deeper level, to know it in our bones, so we don't have to force ourselves to hold back or restrain ourselves from behavior. We're just less interested in doing it in the first place. And this is what mindfulness is all about. Seeing really clearly what we get when we get caught up in our behaviors, becoming disenchanted on a visceral level, and from this disenchanted stance, naturally letting go. This isn't to say that, poof, magically we quit smoking, but over time, as we learn to see more and more clearly the results of our actions, we let go of old habits and form new ones. The paradox here is that mindfulness is just about being really interested in getting close and personal with what's actually happening in our bodies and minds from moment to moment. This willingness to turn toward our experience rather than trying to make unpleasant cravings go away as quickly as possible. And this willingness to turn toward our experience is supported by curiosity, which is naturally rewarding. What does curiosity feel like? It feels good. And what happens when we get curious? We start to notice that cravings are simply made up of body sensations. Oh, there's tightness, there's tension, there's restlessness, and that these body sensations come and go. These are bite-sized pieces of experiences that we can manage from moment to moment, rather than getting clobbered by this huge, scary craving that we choke on. In other words, when we get curious, we step out of our old fear-based reactive habit patterns and we step into being. We become this inner scientist where we're eagerly awaiting that next data point. Now, this might sound too simplistic to affect behavior, but in one study we found that mindfulness training was twice as good as gold standard therapy at helping people quit smoking. So it actually works. And when we studied the brains of experienced meditators, we found that parts of a neural network of self-referential processing called the default mode network were at play. Now, one current hypothesis is that a region of this network called the posterior cingulate cortex is activated not necessarily by craving itself, but when we get caught up in it, when we get sucked in and it takes us for a ride. In contrast, when we let go, step out of the process just by being curiously aware of what's happening, this same brain region quiets down. Now we're testing app and online-based mindfulness training programs that target these core mechanisms. And ironically,
ketika saya pertama kali belajar meditasi, instruksinya sangat sederhana. Perhatikan napas Anda. Dan ketika pikiran Anda mengembara, kembalikan perhatian pada napas. Kedengarannya mudah, bukan? Tetapi ketika saya duduk di retret meditasi yang hening, saya justru berkeringat melalui kaos saya di musim dingin. Saya tidur siang setiap ada kesempatan karena rasanya sangat melelahkan. Ini benar-benar pekerjaan yang sangat sulit. Jadi saya mulai bertanya-tanya, kenapa begitu sulit untuk memperhatikan sesuatu? Ternyata kita sedang melawan salah satu mekanisme pembelajaran yang paling kuat dan yang paling tua. Secara evolusi dalam otak kita, yaitu pembelajaran berbasis ganjaran, reward-based learning. Cara kerjanya sangat sederhana. Kita melihat makanan, kita makan, kita merasa enak, lalu kita mengingatnya. Pemicu, perilaku, ganjaran sangat efektif. Otak kita belajar dengan sangat cepat dan ini masuk akal secara evolusi. Kalau kita menemukan makanan yang enak dan bergizi, otakmu akan berkata, ingat baik-baik di mana ini berada. Lakukan lagi. Masalahnya, otak kita sangat kreatif. Setelah beberapa waktu, otak berkata, kamu tahu, kita bisa menggunakan sistem ini bukan hanya untuk bertahan hidup. Misalnya, ketika kamu merasa tidak enak secara emosional, ini bukan hanya kamu bisa melakukan sesuatu yang bisa membuatmu merasa lebih baik. Jadi saat kita merasa kita sedang sedih, marah, stres, atau bosan, otak menyarankan kenapa tidak makan sesuatu yang manis, kopi, rokok, atau cek ponsel. Dan kita mencobanya. Lalu kita merasa lebih baik. Dan otak kita berkata, ini berhasil. Itu adalah proses yang sama persis, yang berubah hanya pemicunya. Bukan lagi rasa lapar dari perut, tetapi rasa tidak nyaman dari emosi. Sekarang bayangkan masa remaja. Mungkin kamu merasa anak-anak yang dianggap keren sedang merokok di luar, dan kamu berpikir, aku ingin terlihat keren juga. Itu sebabnya Marlboro Man terlihat seperti itu. Itu bukan kebetulan. Jadi apa yang terjadi? Melihat orang keren, merokok, merasa diterima, ganjaran. Dan setiap kali kita mengulang pola ini, otak kita akan belajar semakin kuat. Lama-kelamaan ini menjadi kebiasaan. Sekarang, biasanya kita berpikir cara menghentikan kebiasaan buruk adalah dengan kemauan keras. Kamu harus berhenti, kamu harus lebih disiplin, kamu harus melawan keinginan itu. Misalnya, itu justru memperkuat konflik di otak. Masalahnya, itu justru memperkuat konflik di otak. Alih-alih melawan kebiasaan, penelitian kami menunjukkan ada cara yang jauh lebih efektif. Menggunakan rasa ingin tahu yang sadar atau mindful curiosity. Kami mengembangkan program pelatihan mindfulness termasuk melalui aplikasi dan platform online yang secara langsung menargetkan mekanisme inti ini. Ironisnya, kami menggunakan teknologi yang sering membuat kita terdistraksi untuk membantu kita keluar dari pola kebiasaan tidak sehat seperti merokok, makan karena stres, perilaku adiktif lainnya. Prinsipnya sederhana. Ketika dorongan itu muncul, jangan langsung bertindak. Dan juga jangan memaksakan diri untuk menolak. Sebaliknya, jadilah penasaran, perhatikan. Apa yang kamu rasakan di tubuhmu? Tegang di dada, hangat di perut, gelisah, apa yang terjadi di pikiranmu? Dengan cara ini, kamu menciptakan jarak antara dorongan dan tindakan. Misalnya, jika kamu terbiasa mengecek email setiap kali bosan atau membalas pesan saat mengemudi, atau mengambil makanan saat stres, lihat apakah kamu bisa berhenti sejenak dan bertanya, apa yang sebenarnya terjadi sekarang? Bukan untuk menghakimi, bukan untuk menyalahkan diri sendiri, hanya mengamati dengan rasa ingin tahu. Yang menarik, ketika kita benar-benar memperhatikan pengalaman itu, tanpa menghindar dan tanpa mengulanginya, otak mulai belajar sesuatu yang baru. Otak mulai menyadari bahwa ganjaran itu sebenarnya tidak sebesar yang dibayangkan. Dan ketika ganjaran berkurang, kebiasaan itu perlahan melemah dengan sendirinya. Jadi, alih-alih melihat pesan, langsung membalas, merasa sedikit lebih baik. Cobalah melihat pesan, berhenti, perhatikan dorongan, rasakan, lepaskan. Dan ulangi. Setiap kali kamu melakukan ini, kamu sedang melatih ulang otakmu, bukan dengan paksa, tetapi dengan kesadaran. Dan inilah yang indah. Kemampuan ini sudah ada di dalam diri kita. Kita hanya perlu mengaksesnya. Terima kasih.